All right, we're at 3:35. Why don't we get started? Thank you for joining. Let me advance the slide. So thank you for joining the Indianapolis Tableau User Group. We're here chaired by myself, Ryan Moore, Analytics Manager at CAR Global, Clay McNeff of C-Spring, Dakota Bagwell, and a new face we actually have here joining us is Ann Hartman. She is a Director of Data Intelligence. And you'll be getting to know her a little bit better in Q2 when she's going to be presenting there. But say hello, Ann.
Hi, guys. Nice to be part of the group.
Glad to have you. So jumping straight into the agenda, we actually have a guest speaker, Jack Hineman of Gaylor Electric, that's going to be presenting on labor efficiency. Then we're going to go to Clay on the Tableau conference recap of last year. And then we're going to be going into tips and tricks with myself. So if you've actually joined before, we have a disclaimer that we're going over here that we need to put in. It's about antitrust, conversation about things that likely aren't going to happen, especially since we're digital right now. But just putting a disclaimer, these are things that we should not be talking about in these meetings. But moving on from that, if you're not familiar with the ITUG purpose, what we're trying to do here is we're a peer-to-peer networking, trying to share best practices that we're having within Tableau in Indianapolis. And we're also trying to foster collegiate discussions of how Tableau is being used to solve business and technology challenges here around Indianapolis, and anything and everything that's involving data visualization. So if you have an important topic about that, always be chatting us up. We're always very responsive on if there's something new going on, we'd like to hear about it. And of course, we have a strong focus on networking and connecting talent to organizations here in Indianapolis. So a structure, we have our co-chairs that I just introduced. What we're trying to do with our co-chairs is create user credibility of people that use Tableau day in and day out, be able to assist you with recruitment and solving problems if you're having problems with Tableau. Try to give you direction and kind of give you a hint of what you might be wanting to do with Tableau in your own organization and ideas of generating from these presentations that we have from other experts coming in that use Tableau in Indianapolis. So our normal format when we're not digital, which has been a while, but we're looking to not go digital in the next meeting or the meeting after that. But we're normally trying to get user suggested topics to be able to present on things that are most relevant to our users. And we're trying to focus on an introductory topic and an advanced topic because we know we have a wide variety of users here. Either they're using Tableau every day and they're experts and only want to learn about advanced topics, but we also try to include something that's more introductory or overview of how Tableau is being used within Indianapolis. Always the best way to connect with us is going to be our Tableau user group on LinkedIn. We'll be putting that in the chat shortly as Jack is giving his presentation, but please add us on there. It's the best way to get a hold of us. It's also, we're going to be putting out our information for our next meeting on there every time. So it's always going to be the best way to reach out to us if you have any questions, or if you're facing a problem within Tableau of maybe you need some direction on that the forms aren't able to answer it. Sometimes it's nice to have someone that you could talk to locally. So jumping straight over to Jack with labor efficiency.
All right, thanks, Ryan. Let me go ahead and start sharing here. Can you see my screen?
We can.
Perfect. Okay, that's me, Vice President of Business Intelligence for Gaylor Electric. I am contractually obligated to show this slide of our reliable resources, outcomes, insights, and genuine care for people. And that's kind of the focus of everything we do and how we align things. And that kind of gets into, as Ryan mentioned, labor efficiency. A little bit of my background, I actually was in IT consulting for about 12 years. Came to Gaylor to be the network administrator about 6 years ago. My boss, the CIO at the time, went to breakfast with the executive team, and the president said, "Hey, I need someone that can build me a bell curve." And my boss said, "Well, Jack can build a bell curve." And then he came back to the office and he said, "Hey, I just told Chuck that you can build him a bell curve, so you better figure it out." And that's kind of what started my data journey. Is I got handed a spreadsheet that looked like this. And if you're trying to draw any conclusions right now by looking at this, you probably can't, which is the same thing that all of our project managers were dealing with out in the field, is that there's not a lot that can be gained when we're looking at our labor like this. So the first thing I did, pretty simple, just plot the labor on a bar chart over time. So the labor hours going vertically, pay periods going left to right, so we can kind of see how we're using labor over the course of the job. And then the bell curve that Chuck was talking about, our president, was this curve you see here, that according to the PMI, this is the most efficient way to run a project of any type, not just a construction project, but any project. You should kind of start slow, ramp up, peak in the middle, and then ramp back down at the end. And so we kind of focus on this execution phase. And we do that from the first payroll date to the estimated completion. So I would bring in the labor estimate and then our labor projection. So if you're not familiar with construction, which I'm sure many of you aren't, the estimate is what we thought it would take when we bid the job and won the job. And then the projection gets updated in real time based on what we think it's going to take to finish the job. So in theory, that estimate line is where we'll be successful. And so if you see the projection go above, that's a problem. If you see it go below, that's a good thing. So then again, we bring in the actual payroll, and then I can forecast the rest of it following that same normal distribution to the end of the project. So we go back to this, and every one of these kind of tells a story. And so you look at a job like this, where we've got these huge peaks and valleys throughout the job. This week in particular, we've got a 10x increase in labor from one week to the next. Well, the issue we have is that you can imagine if you go out to a construction site for the first time and there's only one person there that knows where the material is. There's one person there that knows where the porta potties are. There's one person there that knows where the general contractor's trailer is. So this week is extremely inefficient because we got one person trying to explain the site logistics to the whole rest of this crew that just showed up. So naturally, because that's inefficient, we wind up cutting back down. Now, the other thing is there's a huge shortage for talent in our industry. So when we cut back, we don't like send those guys home for a week or whoever it may be. We send them to another job site. So then when we ramp back up 3 weeks later, well, those folks are already kind of ingrained in that next job site. So what happens is we bring out 6 different people and we train them. And then we send them to another site. And then we bring out 6 different people and train them. So this job site probably trained itself 5 or 6 times over with just the constant ebbs and flows of labor. You can see here that our projection by the end of the job is over our estimate, and this forecast is probably not realistic to finish the job on time. So this kind of brings me to the most common labor curve that we see in our industry, and it happens all the time, and it's this lagging curve, and it goes very similar to this every time. We're 25 weeks in, we've got bad weather. 35 weeks in, the concrete gets poured. 45 weeks, the steel goes up, and 55 weeks, the site's finally available. And this was actually one of the first curves I did, and I went into our executive VP's office and I said, "This is awesome, we're under budget." I'll tell you what he said to me here in a little bit. But, like it says here, what does this have to do with the beach? And so what we're dealing with here with this lagging curve reminds me a lot of the story of Tilly Smith. Tilly Smith is at the time, 10-year-old girl on the beach with her family in Thailand, and they see the tide go way out to sea, like 500 yards. And so, if you go back, everybody's running around, they're checking stuff out, they're able to see coral reef that you're not supposed to be able to see. There's fish flopping around, so everyone's just enjoying the beach. Well, Tilly Smith had just learned in geography class that the tide goes out right before a tsunami hits. And so she's actually credited with saving over 100 lives that day on the beach, because she first told her parents, who told the security, and they wound up getting to high ground, but she knew that the tsunami was coming. And it's kind of the same way. We know that it's coming. So I'm going to step through this again, but now you can see how far we're falling behind. So 25 weeks, the bad weather, concrete's poured, now we're 2,500 hours behind, 4,800 hours behind, almost 7,000 hours behind at this point. And so then, week 72, we've got landfall. So the one thing about our industry that is a constant is the school's going to open in August. We don't get, Purdue's not going to delay and say, you know what, we'll start classes in November because you guys had bad weather last year. Like, it's not going to happen. So we know this date is not moving. That's when the doors are opening on the building, and this job has to be done. So these curves don't get stretched out over a longer period of time. We just have to find a way to get this compacted schedule done. Okay, and then we've got the aftermath. Okay, so we lost 7,500 hours against our projection, which is not good. And we've got 5,400 hours of overtime. Also not good. But then we started to see something different. And that's, what if we can do it another way? And so what we have is a team that builds their plan to fit this curve. So they follow it almost to a T. You've got the 4 dips there. Those are actually 4 holidays, but other than that, they're basically dead on that curve. But this is where we've really, so you can see here, we've saved almost 8,000 hours against our projection. But this is the most significant difference between the two projects. And really, you kind of see there at the top, it's about 4 projects or dozens of projects. So it's about what this team's able to do. So this job is running smooth. It's going exactly according to plan. So now this project manager can look for his next job. He can meet with customers. He can build his plan for the next job. And so that next job starts kind of the same way. The other thing with this is if you flip that curve upside down, they fit basically right inside each other. So if you string enough of these together, we pretty much just pull people off of one job and send them to the next. And so you've got a pretty consistent flat line of labor that you can follow. Now, what's this team doing at the end of this job? So this was actually, I loved sending this to marketing. If you get a chance to tell marketing that you need firefighters surfing on a tidal wave, putting out a dumpster fire, and you can be within earshot when they receive that email, It's a pretty good time. But so yeah, they're dealing with all the chaos of this job. And so the way these go is they've got extra people, so they send them over to this next job site too early, which that job doesn't need them. So that's inefficient there. Then the tsunami hits and they pull them back, and you start to see this job falling behind. And then they get through it, and there's this exhale. Okay, so everybody takes a breath, and if you see the other job over here, it's starting off the exact same way. The other piece that we didn't necessarily factor in is, okay, this group dropped off over here on the left. Why didn't it pick up on the right? Well, you can imagine if you just were on a terrible job that lost money and you were dealing with 5,400 hours of overtime, that's not a place people want to work. So we wind up losing a lot of people through that process. And so now we've got this hiring phase on the next job. And once again, we're struggling. And so this has been a real key for us, is if you follow the curve and you have a plan, then your jobs will run pretty smooth, versus down here on the bottom, you're in this kind of cycle of chaos that if you don't get out in front of it, the next job's just going to string together the exact same way. Now, most of what I've shown you, I built in Excel, but this next couple of things are where Tableau has really kind of been a huge deal for us. So I left out part of the story when my boss went to that breakfast, is there was another guy that said he knew some Tableau consultants that could build the bell curve. So actually I was told, hey, not only do you have to build this bell curve, but you're competing with these Tableau consultants. I wound up making the better bell curve, but that's where I found out about Tableau and could see how powerful it was for things like this. So we built this small multiple chart where we can look at all the bell curves at one time, and they start to kind of pop off the page to me. So you've got your jobs that are following the curve and looks like they've got a pretty good plan. You've got your jobs that are way over budget. You can see they're way out in front of the curve on the left side. Their forecast is way below the line. So unless these jobs are going to finish earlier than this completion date, we're going to struggle to land on that projection. It looks like we're off on our average. And then the last set is the tsunami's coming. And it even kind of looks like it. You've got, the tides out on the left, and then you've got this huge wave over on the right. You see that kind of sawtooth on the right. It's a telltale sign that they're behind schedule. So that's one of the tools we've built with Tableau, so that we can kind of point our executive team and others to jobs that they need to be concerned with. And then we've also built this scatter plot. Okay, so every dot represents a job. Going horizontally, that's what your expected labor should be. And then vertically, what your actual labor spend is by percentage. So every job should just follow this path that should be 45 degrees, although it's a little skewed from start to finish. And so then we've got these kind of triangle areas that if you're above the line, you're over budget. If you're below the line, you're behind schedule. And you can see here, there's a job that's spent 38% of its labor, but it only should have spent 5 at this point. Same thing behind schedule. You look at the jobs over here, and you can see they're way below the curve. So they're not on track to finish. So again, we're looking for all the jobs to kind of stay in this middle area. And this is just another tool to let us identify projects that need more attention. Reliable outcomes. So this was kind of the second thing I built after the bell curve was something I called these hindsight reports. So basically, and this concept I think applies to many of you, not just our industry. This will, I think, fit in more, but it's basically this concept of, we wish we knew then what we know now. And so what I did was I would rank our previous projects based on a metric, group them then to tiers, and then I'd look at the financial performance across those trends. So basically what you're looking here, you see the gray lines, those kind of signify the different tiers. The left is the best 10%, right is the last 10%, blue is good, red's bad. It's basically what you need to know. So one of the hunches we kind of had was that the size of your purchase orders was a difference maker in project success. So what we're looking at here is we take cost of the job divided by our average PO. We're basically looking at, is a team doing a bunch of bulk buyouts up front, or are they doing a bunch of small purchases? So do you have a lot of POs relative to the contract, or a few? Okay, so our jobs with the least amount of purchase orders, we make almost 30%. Our jobs with the most, we make 8%. Okay, and so the story here is, did this team have a plan? The teams that do a bulk buyout up front, they know exactly the material that they're going to need to build the job. They've got a plan, and so they buy it all at once. That's the team on the left versus the team on the right that is running to Lowe's every Thursday to pick up 4 outlet covers because they don't have a plan. So this is a metric that we watch and see how POs are trending on our jobs to see what's happening there. This is labor hours per phase. It basically means we break down a project, if it's 10,000 hours, into phases, kind of bite-sized chunks, mini projects, whatever you want to call it, to organize the project, to complete it in phases. So we give ourselves kind of milestones. And this came from, I was just in a training seminar, and someone said that 300 hours is the magic number. And a lot of times we're dealing with this anecdotal evidence of, well, that's just the way we've done it 300 hours, and we didn't have any proof behind it. So I dug into it. Our jobs that are 340 hours per phase or less, we make 18%. And then our profit plummets beyond that point. So it's not 300 hours, but 340 is pretty close. But the premise is, in order to break down your job into these 300-hour segments, you got to know your job pretty well. You've got to know the details. You understand the project, versus if you win a project that has 10,000 hours and you can't even break it into chunks, then you're probably not very well prepared for that job. So again, does the team have a plan? Travel. This one was a fun one to uncover. Okay, so how far are we from our office? So 14 to 41 miles, we make 17%. Our farthest jobs, profit drops to 8.6%. That's kind of expected. We're not going to go 500 miles to build a Starbucks. These are big jobs that everybody in the country wants to win. High competition. And so you're not going to win those jobs if you put 40% margin into the projects. So that part's expected, but what we didn't expect was this. The actual worst place for us to build is closest to our office. Okay, and we've got a couple theories on this. One of them is our offices don't necessarily sit next to the best, we're around a lot of retail, or other things that might not be our strong suit. Another thing is, when it's 3 miles away, it's pretty easy for our project managers to stop by with donuts in the morning, spend 15 minutes on site, and then head into the office that's got air conditioning and their comfortable chair and their dual monitors and everything like that. And then the third piece is, if you're in the Indianapolis area, you've probably seen our trailers sitting on some job sites. And, it's probably not going to go well if our competition sets up a trailer that our president has to drive by every morning on the way to work. So maybe we're a little extra competitive in those areas by our office, just so we don't have to stare at those trailers as we drive in. So those are some things that we can look at. Obviously, we're still going to pursue that work, but it's something that our teams are now aware of, that they can use accordingly when they're bidding the jobs. And then this was the biggest one that I actually got from, I just heard in the hallway from accounting, that someone said they thought billing credits, the phrase, you might hear it all the time, but I've kind of really taken it to heart when I hear someone say, I bet fill in the blank. I bet the jobs with high billing credits, we don't make any money. So I looked into it. 540 jobs with no credits, we make 21%. The next best set of jobs, the next best 10% of jobs that are still issuing the least amount of credits, we lose almost 4.5%. So we issue one credit, we lose 4.5%. You can see over here on the right, this worst tier of jobs actually loses money. So this is another indicator that we look at on a regular basis to see how those jobs are performing, because we know as soon as we see credits hit a job, that's problematic. And this is a customer relationship issue. Most of the work we do is a fixed bid. So we get a contract for $1 million. By the end of the job, we're going to receive that $1 million. The only difference is kind of when we get it. So if a customer is not accepting our invoice, that means they don't trust us, or we haven't been in communication that we don't know that they're not going to accept that invoice. So this is a pretty good sign that we've got a bad relationship with the customer going on. And then I'm trying to find one. So the way we kind of look at that, I'll pull this over here real quick. But for every one of our projects, we've built this kind of radar chart where the perfect job would have this top slice down in the middle, because that's the contract, which is a negative indicator. The higher the contract, generally, the lower the profit percentage. But then everything else would be all the way out to the edge. And so we can look at this. This team's doing great on credits, no credits. But you can see their purchase orders are not good. Leased labor is not good. Overtime is not good. And so these are all things we can look at on every job to kind of see how they compare to those historical measurements. And that's kind of a big tool for our teams, so they can look at that to manage the jobs, and kind of for our operations managers and executive team to kind of keep an eye on which jobs, again, might be an issue that we need to put more focus on. So then lastly, Certainly not least is genuine care for people and safety. We've heard maybe of people taking shortcuts on safety for the sake of profit. And here's what we found with regards to that. So 850 jobs that have had no incident of any type, we make 19%. Jobs with a non-reportable incident, these are first aid type, Band-Aids, near misses, we make 13% on those. And if we have a reportable incident, our profit drops to 2%. So again, that, this myth of, we'll save some money by, maybe we don't go full glove policy or whatever. We've kind of proven that it's false. A safe job is a profitable job, and vice versa. An unsafe job is a non-profitable job. So we've come at it from both angles of, we definitely want, could be chicken or the egg, but kind of, we can see that safety not only helps us on the ethical side, but also on the financial side as well. So we've been taking all this into account to apply to our jobs on a day-to-day basis. So that's all I've got. If there's any questions, or Ryan, I'll hand it back to you.
All right. Incredible job, Jack. I hope everyone found it as compelling as I did when I first saw this presentation. Jack, in terms of like engagement you're seeing from your leadership or management, is it extremely high with these dashboards? I would imagine it would be.
Yeah, we've had a lot of engagement from our team. And it starts at the top. Our president has been on the analytics train, if you'll call it, for, before I even got into this area of business intelligence. He's been wanting dashboards and data. I spoke at a presentation at the Tableau conference, and they asked me about the transparency and, does everyone in our company have access? And we go through the financials every month with the whole company. Everyone knows how much profit we made, revenue. We're totally transparent on anything. And I actually showed the picture, but basically he's got 6 TVs set up in his office that, if you just pull up outside in the middle of the night, you can kind of see what our dashboards look like, because they're on most of the time. And they're just ready to go. So it's one of the few, definitely in our industry, there's not a lot of people that have 6 TVs sitting in their office with different dashboards on them all the time. But he's kind of, enforced that usage throughout the company here. So if you see this, that's outside our office. You see the glow over here. And if you look in the windows, there's the dashboards up that, we're totally good with anyone being aware of these numbers and embrace people using the data.
Well, thanks again for the presentation. And I think everyone can easily see how this is applicable to just everyone because of how important people are and scheduling plans for labor. So let's jump over to Clay with the Tableau conference recap.
All right. Thank you once again, Jack. That was fantastic. Can someone give me a thumbs up, Anne, if you can see my screen there? Perfect.
Yep, we can see it.
Thank you so much. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. After a long holiday break, it's really great to see everyone back. My name is Clay McNeff, and I'm a senior Tableau developer at Seaspring. and I have the pleasure today of recapping Tableau Conference 2021. For many years, these conferences were held in person. Me personally, I started attending them back in 2016, and at that time, I believe it was their 9th annual conference. I believe that makes last year's their 14th, but along with everything else in our lives, Tableau had to re-strategize during the pandemic, and perhaps fortunately for many of us, the conference was moved to A, being virtual, and B, being free to attend. So hopefully that means that many of you were able to attend parts of last year's conference. But for those that weren't, or for those that just want a bit of a refresher, I'm going to be spending some time today mostly covering the keynote presentations that highlighted many of the new features that we're going to be expecting this year, and maybe start to scratch the surface on some of the other sessions I attended. It's going to be a lot of information thrown at you very quickly, but hopefully you'll get a quick glance at some of the cool enhancements coming in 2022. And for those wanting a little bit more information afterwards, you can also find a full write-up of the 27 sessions I attended on my company's website, and I'll provide a link to that at the end of this presentation. So let's start things off with the maybe the most highly anticipated session of each year's conference. That's the opening keynote presentation. Tableau's president and CEO, Mark Nelson, began by discussing the world shift to being digital first and how digital transformation adoption jumped 5 years forward in just 8 weeks due to the pandemic. He continued by explaining how data analysis really is no longer a tool for the few, but it's now a skill for everyone, redefining how the world defines analytics. He pointed to several data points that highlighted just how big the data analysis community, and specifically the Tableau community, is growing, including Tableau job postings that have jumped 18%, user groups that have attracted 160,000 participants. 160,000 attendees in just the last 2 years alone. Tableau Public that now features over 4.5 million vises that have had 4.5 billion views. Yeah, that's billion with a B, which is kind of crazy to think about. And then finally, Tableau Academic that has put Tableau in the hands of nearly 2 million educators and students around the globe. Mark then presented some customer success stories, which showcased amazing progress made by some companies, including Jaguar Land Rover and the Seattle Seahawks. But this set the stage for him to really highlight some inefficiencies that still exist. I'm sure many of you have heard similar statistics in the past, while he said that while all CEOs want their organizations to be data-driven, fewer than 30% feel they've actually hit that mark. And it's that gap where Tableau has positioned itself, creating a Tableau economy that stands on 3 main pillars. That's the 1 million person Tableau community, the 1,200 company Tableau partner network, and the technology itself, the Tableau platform. So he then went on to explain how it takes investment on Tableau's part to grow each one of those pillars. For the Tableau community, they're continuing to support the networking, sharing, and learning that's necessary to make the community experience valuable. They're expanding the opportunity for like-minded leaders to share how to build data-driven organizations, and they're continuing to enhance Tableau Public. For Tableau partners, they're revamping the Tableau partnership network and making it easier for customers to find partners and solutions. And for the Tableau platform, they're continuing to bring new features. On that note, he handed the presentation over to Chief Product Officer Francois Agenstadt to share Tableau's product vision, outlining exactly how Tableau intends on evolving the Tableau platform to better meet customers' and partners' needs. Francois bucketed these innovations into 4 main categories, and those are on your screen now. Those are collaborative and accessible analytics, Tableau Business Science, trusted data at scale, and analytics everywhere. He then went on to provide several examples of each, demoing many of them, and I'll attempt to review some of those now. So as part of Tableau's push for more collaborative and accessible analytics, Tableau has added Slack to its platform. We work in an all digital world, yet too often we have to leave the people to access our tools, then leave the tools to return to our people, and so on. Integrating Tableau and Slack makes data part of your natural flow. So first, Tableau can proactively come to the user with data alerts when there are problems or opportunities directly in your Slack feed. Here in this screenshot that I've provided, you can see the user was alerted that a specific price increased over a certain maximum limit that was set. This is appearing directly in the user Slack feed, so commenting, sharing, collaborating on this finding is easier than ever. Being alerted to the high data point is important, but what if you want more context or a possible explanation as to why it's so high? You can navigate directly to Tableau for more information, but explain data in Slack can expand on many of those alerts with more context without ever leaving Slack. And what if these explanations then, in turn inspire more questions? You can discover even more insights directly in your flow by easily searching Tableau within Slack for more data and more visits. And finally, if you can't find what you need, one of Tableau's most powerful self-service innovations, Ask Data, is available within Slack, allowing users to ask specific questions without a particular viz in mind. Open and active collaboration within your Tableau ecosystem has never been easier. So let's move on now to Francois's next big strategic push, and that's taking analytics to the next level with Tableau Business Science. We all want to not only understand what happened, but why and what will happen next. But not everyone has access to AI. It's often complex, slow, and expensive. But Tableau Business Science brings data science techniques to people who have the business context, bringing faster decision-making and increased transparency. So Tableau took the first step towards this end goal in early 2021 when they introduced Einstein Discovery in Tableau, bringing predictions and recommendations to dashboards and calculations. In 2022, Tableau plans to expand on these efforts with Model Builder and Scenario Planning. Let's start with Model Builder. So I'm really excited about this one. Too often we find ourselves with one important metric that we're really wanting to drive. Let's say it's profit, but there are so many variables in our data, we don't really know how to parse out all of these individual effects and understand how they all fit together. Model Builder uses your historical data to build models that vary these inputs for you, providing you with predictive answers to questions like, how does my price affect my profit, or does offering a discount help or hurt my bottom line? Within Model Builder, you select a target variable you want to optimize, and then Tableau will then scan your data and determine which variables are most likely to impact this target variable. And then Einstein AI uses automated machine learning to then train your model. You can review the accuracy of your model, what your most predictive variables are, and what each independent variable's correlation is to your target variable. You can, further fine-tune this model. You can even collaborate and communicate with others who might have additional insight into your data and model. And then now that you've, gathered some of these future predictions, what can you do about it? And that's where Scenario Planner comes into play. This allows you to take this information and compare real world alternatives. What happens to net profit if I increase minimum inventory from 20,000 to 30,000? Or what happens to customer satisfaction if I switch exclusively to my faster vendor? These are all very specific what if scenarios that your models can predict with your Model Builder and Scenario Planner. So let's move on now to our third section. This is going to be trusted data at scale. So, how do you find the data you need to answer questions you have? How can you trust the data? How can you clean the data so everyone can access it? Tableau Prep has helped clean your data, and Tableau Prep Conductor has helped you scale your approach. Tableau Catalog has provided the lineage you need, and improvements to all three are coming. Virtual connections within Tableau Catalog are centrally managed and reusable access points for your data. It's the one place to define data standards and security policies for your users. Instead of having several tables all published individually to Tableau server, the privacy for each being managed separately Now you can lump them together, manage them together, create one single simple access point. And once you have a workbook built off of a virtual connection, what do you do about all the blank descriptions for all your fields? Adding descriptions to your data fields is extremely important for your users to understand the meaning of your data. You could individually type them in, reading from whatever enterprise data catalog your organization uses to manage this metadata, like Elation or Informatica. But wouldn't it be great to get that metadata to seamlessly flow right into Tableau? And Tableau is working on incorporating external metadata straight into your Tableau ecosystem, saving responsible data stewards significant time. And now that your data's lineage has been shored up, we can move on to the actual data prep. Tableau continues making monthly improvements to Tableau prep. And what they've been hearing is that users need more flexibility and reusability with their flows. That's why they're currently working on Tableau prep extensions, which will let users extend the functionality of Tableau prep with reusable flows. With reusable functionality that significantly expands data preparation possibilities. And then finally, sharing Tableau prep flows can be a fairly manual process that involves a lot of copying and pasting or emailing of flows. But as the Tableau community continues to grow and collaboration continues to improve, Tableau is enabling prep flows to be shared in Tableau Public so that we can all benefit from the good work that's being accomplished by others. So finally, let's move on to the last section of product innovation, and that's going to be analytics everywhere. Tableau wants to help connect its community of users to new opportunities for growth and development, unleashing creators and builders so they can build amazing solutions on the Tableau platform. Tableau Public has become a special place for sharing, networking, and learning. Many people have built careers using Tableau Public, and with Tableau Public's new Hire Me tag, community members can now advertise not only just their work, but also their availability. Also being introduced is the Tableau Exchange, a place to discover, share, and trade the assets you need to accelerate success with Tableau. If you've used the Tableau gallery before, you know that there's already a wide variety of great extensions and connectors being shared there. They're being moved to the Tableau Exchange, and new assets are being added, including data sets and accelerators. Accelerators, they extend the idea of dashboard starters and are designed to leverage best practices from different kinds of analysis and allow you to jump right into solving your problem instead of starting from a blank canvas. Other improvements to the Tableau platform are in the works. Tableau is making it easier for developers to connect to Tableau by using your favorite third-party tools to manage your users instead of forcing developers to use Tableau for this. They're also enabling embedded web authoring within your apps, so you won't need to download Tableau Desktop anymore. Instead, you can utilize the full power of Tableau directly inside your app. Also being added is an embedded and customizable Ask Data functionality. And finally, to make it easier to go from insight to action, Tableau is also introducing Tableau Actions, which will give you one-click execution of any action in any external service by any user, like kicking off a purchase order or emailing a client. Actions like these can now be programmed into your Tableau dashboards so that you're only one click away from Tableau kicking off these important next steps. Tableau also, they want to make analytics easier and faster and more actionable by expanding the breadth and depth of the Tableau platform through these product innovations. It's not really, within the scope of my presentation today to demo these, nor would it really be possible to do so given that many of these aren't being released until later this year. What I've done so far is essentially boil down a 60-minute, Tableau Keynote presentation down to like a 10 or 12-minute summary. But I definitely recommend going to Tableau's repository of on-demand TC21 videos and watching the opening keynote presentation there if you want to see any of these latest and greatest features in action. So with that, I do want to move on to another highly anticipated session from each year's conference, and that's the Devs on Stage presentation. Whereas the opening keynote presentation takes a look at some of the larger innovations on the horizon from a high-level strategy point of view, The Devs on Stage presentation takes a much more granular approach, looking at some of the smaller product features which contribute to the ongoing constant evolution of the Tableau platform. The developers grouped these features by product this year, focusing first on the core analytics product, and then moving on to upcoming enhancements to Tableau Prep, Tableau Server, Tableau Online, and finally Tableau Public. We won't have time to discuss all the features you're going to see on your screens today, but I do want to highlight 2 or 3 within each section that I find particularly interesting and that I feel will affect the largest number of us users. So starting with the first section of features, these are considered improvements to Tableau's core analytics experience. One that I find particularly interesting is visualization extensions. Many of us have our tried and true visualization types, but we also, notice some pretty advanced chart types existing out there on Tableau Public and other public block spaces like flower and donut and sunburst charts. These can be quite difficult to reverse engineer and implement in our own ecosystems, but luckily for us, Tableau is working on making these more challenging chart types drag and drop easy. You'll be able to find these new chart types in future marks cards, and you'll even have access to a Viz Designer in order to get under the hood and fine tune these complex chart types. Templates will even be able to be shared through the gallery. I'm really excited about the possibility of bringing these new chart types to my dashboards. I'm going to skip now down a little bit on this list, stop briefly here on the View Data Redesign, which is expected early this year. I'm especially excited about this one as well because too often I find myself building visualizations for business users who can't quite kick that addiction to spreadsheets. And even after I produce, a wonderfully effective dashboard, at least, one that's effective in my mind, they still just end up wanting access to the underlying data so that they can do their own analysis on their own time. I don't really, love that approach, but I always try to do my best to accommodate. The problem with this is that view data and download data options haven't been historically very flexible. It may include dummy fields that I need for visualization purposes, but only clutter their downloads, or it may omit other fields that they find interesting, but because they aren't in the dashboards for one reason or the other, they're not going to be available to them on their download. Tableau's new View Data Redesign will allow you to control exactly what you see. So this means changing, reordering columns, sorting within a column, adding or removing columns entirely, and pulling the data down as a CSV will respect these changes so that your end user also sees the data exactly how you want them to. And then last in the section is the Workbook Optimizer. We often spend so much time in the weeds when developing a dashboard that it's hard to keep overall performance in mind. And sometimes we find ourselves with an end product that has been iterated on so many times, it's just not quite running as efficiently as we want. Now, when publishing, there's a new option to select that runs an optimizer, and Tableau will automatically scan through your workbook and suggest performance improvements, making fine-tuning your dashboards even easier. All right, let's move on to the next section of features. These are considered improvements to Tableau's augmented analytics functionality. Let's start with the data change radar, which constantly monitors dashboards behind the scenes and will alert you when meaningful changes are noticed. You'll notice in the screenshot here that on this user's Tableau server, this dashboard has appeared in the recommendations with a note that signals to them that unexpected changes to the data have occurred. Clicking into the dashboard brings the user a side pane that provides more information regarding which marks changed. And then clicking into these notifications opens additional context as to why Tableau flagged these changes as being unexpected. The common next question to ask would be, well, why did this change occur? Which takes us to our next feature, explain data in the side pane. Without even leaving where you were at, you'll also be able to click into a section titled Explain This Change, and Tableau will provide possible explanations given the underlying data. And it's not just unexpected changes to the data that'll trigger this functionality. By clicking on the Discover link within Tableau Server, any user can be provided with some helpful hints as to what details should probably be capturing their attention. And, was the case with the previous example, clicking into any one specific explanation brings in additional context, pulling in fields that may not even be present in the dashboard, which is really pretty cool. And as you can see, there's a long list of additional features here pertaining to augmented analytics. But for the sake of time, let's go ahead and skip on to the next section. These are innovations in Tableau Prep. We already touched on virtual connections in a previous section, so I'm going to skip down a couple, which are really meant to provide more transparency and improve the task scheduling processes within Tableau Prep. Prep notifications in Slack provide a quick feedback loop so that you know where your flows are at. And linked tasks mean that you don't have to guess when certain tasks will be done when scheduling subsequent tasks. Linking tasks together means that as soon as one task finishes, the next one begins. This is going to speed up your flows and take a lot of guesswork out of the equation. And even if one task fails, you now have the flexibility to incorporate rules to handle these situations. And then finally, parameters in your prep flows. When you need to make small changes to a few values, yes, when you need to make small changes to a few values, republishing entire flows can seem like overkill. You want your flows to adapt to your changing needs. If a parameter is added to your flow, anyone running the flow will be prompted to adjust the parameter value to what makes most sense to them, speeding up your flow and reducing possible redundant work in the future. So let's now move on to the next product, and that's going to be improvements to Tableau Server and Tableau Online. Tableau is expanding the resource monitoring tools to make it easier and quickly diagnose when things are slow. This view that I've included to the right monitors dashboard load times. It helps you triage system issues and solve problems faster. It works by taking all your dashboard load times to establish a baseline, and then from there you can see what's running slowly or what has failed entirely. And if you do run into issues, time-stamped granularity has been added to zip logs. So if you have to share your logs, you don't have to pull an entire day's logs anymore. Another need that Tableau continues to hear on a regular basis is providing help to those needing to grant equitable access to background or resources. It's for this reason that Tableau is adding customizable resource limits. It works by allowing you to set default limits to all your sites and providing you the ability to customize if, say, you're approaching important times of the year and need to make temporary changes. There's far more features here that we don't have time to discuss today, but if you're a server administrator wanting to know more about what's upcoming in 2022, please research the rest of these or check out the presentation online. The final section of these Devs on Stage presentations unveils improvements being made to Tableau Public. So one of the things I love most about Tableau Public is, pulling down files and attempt to learn what I can from developers with different skill sets than what I have. And this isn't tremendously difficult if you have Tableau Desktop, as downloading a TWBX is, really relatively easy. But what if you don't have Tableau Desktop? Tableau is bringing full web authoring to Tableau Public. So now it's as easy as selecting their make a copy link in order to launch a web authoring window, complete with a copy of the dashboard you were just viewing. And one particular area of Tableau Public that I'm most excited about is called Discover. And it's the place where community members can find something new or inspiring, a cool or upcoming creator, or easily keep up with what your network is working on all in one place. Discovery brings together the best of Tableau Public, tailored to exactly what you're interested in. The first channel in Discover is called For You to Explore, and it'll grow to be the best place for personalized content you will want to follow. Some of what you'll find here will be from creators you follow, and some will be from creators you won't be following. But Tableau thinks that what you'll see here will resonate based on your network's activity and your topics of interest. Additional channels will be curated and be available as you scroll down this Discover page. Topical channels that Tableau has put together to provide you with interesting vizzes every time you visit. Here in this screenshot, you'll see a featured authored and a section of vizzes that Tableau knows I'm interested in, sports and fitness. And soon users will be able to create custom channels so that you can organize your inspiration and interests on the fly. So that's it for devs on stage. And as was the case with the opening keynote presentation, I highly recommend going to Tableau's repository of on-demand TC21 videos and catching the presentation there. So before I end, my portion of the presentation today, I do just want to give one more plug for Tableau Conference. What's so cool about Tableau Conference is that no matter where you're at in your Tableau journey, Tableau Conference will have something for you. I've really just highlighted the two main keynote presentations today, but Tableau offers hundreds of additional sessions spanning really a huge variety of content. When I attended in 2016, I had been using the tool for about 2 months. So I was really about as beginner as you can get, but I filled my schedule to the brim with beginner level learning opportunities and just learned a ton. And as the years have passed and my skill set has evolved, my interests have changed, and I've tailored my conferences a bit differently. There's Tableau Jedi sessions for the most advanced developers. There's Tableau server sessions for administrators. There's culture building and data literacy sessions if you're operating in more of a strategy setting role. No matter where you're at and what you're interested in, there's going to be a lot at Tableau Conference for you. Just to kind of highlight some of that here, I put up one final slide that has a list of some additional sessions that I attended this last year that I really thought were fantastic. The first one I've listed, Data, Ethics, and Leadership in 2021, was really eye-opening. Data shapes policies and systems all over the world, and yet not all data is perfect. And it really takes an emphasis on ethical collection, analysis, and communication of data to drive an ethical data culture. And this session with the Urban Institute was really great to follow. I've included some other sessions here that were really rooted in dashboard design, from bland to bold, which took much more of an aesthetic approach. And the Make It Better session really focused on taking existing charts that we all make today, but making very important tweaks to take them up a notch. There's a couple others on there as well. I believe all these sessions here, along with hundreds of other videos, should all be available in Tableau's repository of on-demand videos. You can find a link to those there at the bottom of your screen. You can also, if you're interested in reading a little bit more from my notes on this year's conference, you can find a full 27-session wrap-up on my organization's website down at the bottom of the slide as well at cspring.com. So with that, I think that's it for me. Ryan, I'll go ahead and hand it back over to you.
Fantastic job, Clay. And you actually had a giant task of trying to condense that down to manageable bite size there. Great job. Yeah, so we're going to be jumping right into tips and tricks now. And I will be the one guiding everyone through them. All right, I don't see the normal outline. Can someone tell me, you guys can see my tips and tricks here?
Yes, we can see your desktop screen.
Okay, fantastic. I'm gonna have my notes a little bit above that. All right, we're gonna have about 10 to 15 minutes of tricks here. And just to keep in mind that I'm gonna be going from some very beginner friendly ones to maybe a little bit more advanced, but some of these I'm trying to target tips that are things that I use personally, and they might not be on a list that you might see that if you were to Google Tableau tips and tricks, but I'm also grabbing some from those Tableau tips and tricks if you were to go Googling, because I think a good idea should be shared regardless of where the idea came from. So just starting off, I am a huge proponent of containers. I think they organize things, and just giving you an idea of each one of these, but sometimes they're very difficult to work with. One of the biggest tips that I could give you is that when you're working with them, double clicking on them will show you and will go up one level. So this pink is actually within a container that is containing both the blue and the pink. So if you double click on the top, it's going to go to the next one level up. And if I click one more time, it's the next level up. It's very small, but it really is actually useful when you're trying to understand how the sheets are combining into the structure that you're building on your dashboard. So very short, very simple, but if you didn't know it, And sometimes you can live within a software and not know certain tricks like this, and it's actually very useful. Another one that I always a huge proponent of is when I'm organizing my dashboards or my workbooks, that I'm going to color code both the dashboard and the sheets that are going to be going into it in a certain color to be able to keep track of them. Another one that I don't see pointed out is the navigation within workbooks itself. If I'm coloring multiple sheets, you can see that these ones are labeled red, that they're related. And also down here at the bottom right, these different navigational abilities to switch from a tiled view, from the normal view with a thumbnail back to normal. And then also, if you're familiar with Excel, control page down, up and down actually moves between sheets, which is actually nice as well. The next tip, so you have your labels down here at the bottom. Here's another one where if you were to go into table layout and I'm trying to move it to the top, if I click this off, it moves it to the top. Sometimes that's a little bit confusing on getting to do that. Another one that I haven't seen mentioned that often, but it's actually very useful if you aren't using the entire format for workbook, is that if I were to change something around here in terms of formatting, let's make that extra bold and extra gaudy, changing the format in here. What you can do is you can copy and paste formatting. So it used to look like it originally did here, and I copied the formatting from here and I pasted it over into the next sheet. Useful if you're not using the entire workbook ability of formatting, just something you might not be aware of. Another thing that I actually didn't realize you could do for the longest time is this search up here is that you have different abilities to look for. Say if you're looking for dimensions, you can put in a D and a colon, and it's going to show all your dimensions up here. Another one that you can use is M, which would be your measures. You can use C for your calculated fields. Say I'm looking for my calculated field and I have a ton within this workbook. I want to look for calculated fields with variable in the name. There it is right there. Then you also can use these right here, clicking on that. So you can come in here, type in what you're going to be searching for within the comment within that calculated field. Useful things that you can miss even if you've been using the software for a long time. Moving on to the next one. Oh. So a lot of the time you'll have something like this. So you're going to put something out here. It doesn't have the header that you normally would want. What you can do very quickly is you can take these measured values. Hey, put it up at the top, exactly what you wanted. Sometimes just getting to that top where you drag on the profit onto the sheet and then you're just trying to get the label up above it. You can drag measure values onto here, and that's the quickest way to do that. Just a very quick tip. Another tip that you can see is if you wanted to color, you'll see that it's coloring each one of the columns with the same measure values. If you right click and use separate legends, now it's coloring each column independently. And from there, you can do your normal, I'm going to change this to square. And then you can change it around for each individual column to how you want to highlight your data the best. Oh. So this is the next one. I actually had it in there from my test earlier today. But what I was going to show you was that sometimes I've seen where you make a calculated field and you put the calculated field next to the measure values right here, whether or not it's conditionally up or down. One thing that I did want to point out to you is that you can go within each format, and anything that you can put in within the ASCII character, you can actually make a custom format in here where you're putting in an ASCII up or down depending on it being negative or positive. So I'm going to take from my notes, I'm going to put my down arrow right here. So now it's putting that ASCII character right next to my negatives. Now I'm going to put my positives as well. And these will actually be colored. And I can gotta leave it like that, but it's actually coloring the ASCII character as well. So very useful. But just keep in mind, any kind of character that from an ASCII character, you can get very creative with this. And if you don't want to use an arrow up or an arrow down. So for this one's actually changing around the order of operations. So normally, if you were to have a rank within here and I'm ranking them by sum of profit, sometimes you would see that this is going all the way down to 49, so I'm missing one. But say if I were to put it to the west, it's re-ranking them based on my selection. Sometimes you're wanting to keep what the rank was before you made that selection. And let me show you a quick and easy way to do that. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually making a calculated field. Let me show you that. So this calculated field, what it's doing is it's changing the order of operations. And if you use this max around the region, which does nothing, and then you do a lookup of the same row that it's already looking, and then you use it as a filter, the action you actually get is it keeps the rank as you would want it. So if I were to look at the West, now it's keeping exactly what rank it was before you applied the filter. So when you're creating this filter up here, the trick to it is to change this into a table calculation, and it's keeping the rank as you would want it. Okay, one thing that I kind of find as a struggle with Tableau is when I'm trying to create bins. If I were to bin profit here, it's going to give me a suggestion of what size bins, but it's not very variable. And if I were to highlight over this using one that I had done before, it's going to tell me that the bin is 0, which it's not giving me the range. I really don't like this, and it's not very user-friendly to me. What you can do is you can create a variable bin size. And how you do that is use calculated fields. And I'm actually going to allow my user to interact with a parameter. So I have my parameter down here. Let me show you that first. So I'm using a 25. I'm using steps of 25, 0 to 250 is the maximum, using a float in there. And what I do with that is I incorporate it into the calculated field here. And here's the formula for that. I can share this workbook, but you're copying and pasting it. And I am putting my profit divided by my variable selection, times it again. And then what it ends up doing is it allows you to have a user to be able to see a distribution based on how they would like to see it. So you're able to interact a little bit more with the data, changing the bin size of the data in real time. And another benefit is that you can create what the top was. So I've got my variable bins up here, and then I'm adding the selection to it to give me the top label here. So for this one, it's looking at 0 to 125, and I have the top in my tooltip. Here's the bottom, here's the top. And then even with the change of the selection, here's 0 to 150. Useful. It allows the user to be able to have more control over what they're seeing. Here is one that I'm going to change to a different workbook for. So this one's interesting. If you've ever run into an example of a dashboard that you put a lot of time into, say if you were to fully develop this this workbook and you have a lot of time into this 1000 by 600, and then you finally get feedback and that they really want you to add one more thing, but you don't have any ability to do that with the current layout, and what you're really needing to do is add more height. But when you add more height, it messes up the layout completely because you just saw it stretch there. What you're ideally wanting is this desired this space down here at the bottom to be added without the normal dashboard that you already had developed and laid out perfectly to not be adjusted. What someone on the forum has done is created a Visual Basic script, and what it does is it goes within this TWB file and it actually does it for you. So let me go into my notes here. And I can link this out to everyone, but you're gonna have to follow the forum post and you're gonna have to be okay with running a Visual Basic script to have this work. And what it does, and I'll click through and show you what it does real quick. So it gives you a prompt, and I think it's gonna keep showing up on my other page. But what I would do is it opens up, it lets me select, and it has to be a TWB file. Okay, 1 second. It's telling me that the height is that. I'm going to tell it I want it 800. I'm going to click yes. And then it just resaved it out for me. And here it is right there. And if I were to open this back up, there is the original dashboard at the top. Actually, let's go to current. So here's the original dashboard here at the top, and then it's got the white space that I desired. Sometimes that's a very useful tool, but it's a very niche application. Here's another one that's very normal, and it's probably not going to drop any jaws, but if you're new to Tableau, what you can do is you can have an interaction between a parameter, and what you do here is you create a parameter with multiple names inside of it. I'm going to look at, for the Superstore data, profit, sales, and quantity. The user is going to select what they want to use and what they want to see visualized. And then what you do is you just have an if statement within a calculated field. And if it's equal to the values that the parameter is set, it's changing what is being shown within the dashboard. So when the user changes it to sales, the calculated field upgrades or updates to what they selected, and it updates the visualization. Useful again, allows your users more independence to be able to see what they want to see. This last one, I haven't seen anyone mention, but it's extremely useful to me. And what would happen would be, let me open this. So this is the normal Superstore data. Say I had a workbook that had a lot of different data sources and it had a lot of different sheets within here, and they're all working off of one data source. But I realized this sheet needs to be using a different data source, but it's using one that all the other sheets are using. Now I can't go to the normal inside here where I am, where is it? Replace data source. Let me duplicate this real quick. I can't do the normal replace data source with this copy or the other data source that I just developed for the sheet, because if I do this, it applies to all my sheets. Now, what you can do and what I advise people to do as a tip, let me pull in my other workbook real quick. not, there it is. What I advise people to do is you open up another workbook, you have your new data source, and what you can do is this. I'm going to copy my sheet. I'm going to paste it into the new workbook that I just opened. So I've got my normal Superstore right here. What I'm going to do in this other workbook is I'm going to replace normal with the different Superstore, which is the data source that I just developed. It just swapped the data sources there as I wanted. And then since it's swapped over here, I'm going to bring it back to my original workbook. Now I have the visualization and only this visualization using a different Superstore and the different data source without all of these other worksheets being affected. So if you have a very detailed sheet and you have a different data source that it alone needs to change to, this is going to save you some time to be able to paste it into another workbook, change the data source, paste it back in. It's a little bit of overhead, but sometimes that is a big time saver compared to recreating the sheet with a new data source. So that is actually all of my tips that I had today. And we have just a few minutes left in our meeting. So let's jump back into this. I just wanted to thank everyone that has presented today. Jack, that was a great presentation, extremely compelling. Clay, great job on recapping. And everyone that joined here, thank you for joining. And please interact with us using our LinkedIn. Register with Tableau for our user group, the Indianapolis Tableau user group here. Sign up for our hub within Splash to be able to make sure that you're getting those invites. And going on to Q2 this year, I'm really looking to be in person this next quarter if everything works out. We're needing a host. And of course, we always are going to be needing speakers. Even if you don't have as a detailed presentation as Jack had, if you just have done something cool within your workplace using Tableau, we are always open ears and we always want to be presenting things. We're always looking for new guest speakers. And if you are an organization that is open to hosting, please reach out as well. And thank you for joining, everyone. In a few minutes back in your time, if anyone else has anything else to say. Otherwise,
echo what a great job all the presenters did. So please stay in touch, guys.
Yep. Thanks again, Jack. That was fantastic.
Thanks for having me.
thank you again, everyone.